Welcome to the Cool Girls Create podcast. I'm your host, T. Westbrook, and this is where we celebrate entrepreneurship, creativity, and unstoppable women. Join me as we dive deep into inspiring stories. Let's explore the art of business and the business of art. Cool Girls Create podcast, empowering women to create, innovate, and succeed.
I'm so excited to be here with my girl, Jessica. She's a photographer, creative entrepreneur. She has a community for photographers, and she's just super awesome. So we're going to talk to Jessica today and just get into what it's like to be a creative entrepreneur. So Jessica, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Tell our audience, what you do and more about your brand.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. So my name is Jessica, and I have a photography community called Build and Bloom. It's on Facebook, and it's one of the largest and most engaged photography communities. It's kind, it's encouraging, it's inclusive. And so with Build and Bloom, I also teach on YouTube photography tutorials, whether it's film or digital. And recently I've been pivoting since the pandemic more into teaching like the business side of it. And then I also have the Build and Bloom Photography podcast, and I'm coming out with new online courses for the basics of starting up a photography business. So I'm really excited to dive into this episode.
Yay! So that's so interesting that you mentioned that you had to pivot after the pandemic or during the pandemic as an entrepreneur, but that's a good place for us to start. What's it been like for you?
Yes. So I moved from New York to Seattle right before the pandemic. And once the pandemic hit, myself and all other photographers were unable to work with clients. And so I was able to put my time from shooting more into my education, whether that was my courses. So I did in the summertime, I remember I did a live course called Business Basics. That was like every other weekend or so. And then with my YouTube content, it went from shooting behind the scenes and lens comparisons where I'm working with a model and an assistant to video it, because when COVID first started, we didn't really know the parameters of like the safety aspect. So everything kind of shifted more into teaching the business content because other photographers, they were also unable to work with clients and models. So they're really spending a lot more time refining the back end of their business. So maybe that looked like completely rebranding or building out their website more and just finishing these things that are on our to-do list that aren't super fun and exciting. And so I taught all those different elements. I broke it down on YouTube or in other forums. The podcast, I went more into teaching on my podcast, and I was really able to pivot even more time into the education space to be able to serve the community and just bring them resources to continue to grow their business as much as they could.
Yeah. So when it comes to the actual pivot, what was the first, I guess, sign for you that it was time to pivot? So did clients just start to fall off? Like, I don't know what industry you're in, but I'm assuming like maybe engagement or maybe personal branding stuff. So did those clients just like fall off gradually, or was it like an instantaneous, okay, I just have to figure out another game plan because everything is stopped?
So for me, it was instantaneous. Once the mandate started happening, when I was away in California, I was there just for fun, but I was doing quite a bit of shoots. I did a friend's branding session. I did some family photos, a couple shoot. And I remember I was there. My mom calls me and she's like, you need to get back to Seattle. There's this thing that's happening, COVID. So I came back and all of my shoots had been postponed, right? Because everybody's like unsure about, at least in the Seattle area, where it's very liberal here. And so everyone is like taking it, they're how do I say it? Like,
they were being serious about it. It was a bit of confusion, but I understand what you mean, because I'm based in Nashville. So not as liberal, but it was just, everything was just up in the air. So I definitely understand what you're saying. So
yeah, like it was very polarizing, especially at the beginning, where people were like, well, actually, you know what, at the beginning, I feel like everybody was pretty unified about the whole mask mandate, but now it's very polarizing. And so for me, being in a city, especially in a very liberal city, it was everybody canceled, right? And so everybody wanted to postpone, which I was also in agreement with. And so I was really able to look at my business. You know, we didn't know if it was going to last a month. I guessed it was going to last a month at least. I didn't think it was going to be over in like a week or so. And just kind of try to reshift, how am I going to strategize for my YouTube, you know, for the behind the scenes videos that we were going to be filming. What was that going to look like instead? And so for me, it was instantaneous. And I think that was the case for a lot of other photographers and creatives too.
Yeah, you know, for us, so I'm in the event space, so I curate a lot of events and workshops and things like that, and we do some branding content for clients. But during the pandemic, we really it was a chance, it was a risk to have an event, and so we wanted to be safe. So I definitely understand that. So, you know, you talked about strategizing when it comes to the pivot that you took, and just really focusing in on, you know, what type of content am I going to create for my social media and YouTube. Let's talk a little bit more about that from an entrepreneur perspective or a new business owner. So what are some of the things that you did to help you prepare for that transition when it comes to just daily, you know, activities as an entrepreneur? Like, what advice can you offer a new business owner who's wanting to strategize in that way?
I would say, okay, so if you're just getting started in your business, or you're ready to take it, you know, to the next level, maybe you've been doing photography, for example, like as a hobby or as like a side hustle for a minute, but you're really ready to think of it more as a full-time job, regardless if it's going to be full-time or part-time. You're ready to get into a new mindset. I think that you really need to look at social media as a business tool and not as like for personal use, because then you can start separating out personal and professional. And social media is one of the largest like gray areas where you can start to feel very burnt out. So kind of how can you beat burnout before it even begins and before you even dive fully into your business? And so kind of unplugging from social media in the sense of turning your notifications off, content batching, so that when it's time to post, you have the graphic and the text ready to go. So you're not going to find yourself scrolling on Instagram and then, oh my gosh, at the end of the day, it's time for you to post. But now you have to go through your camera roll, you have to think of the caption, or maybe you're already content batching, but you're scrolling all day. So when it comes time to post, you feel a bit of comparison because like subconsciously you've been taking in all of these other people's lives and their posts and comparing yourself to them. And so then you're second guessing, and then, oh, I'm too tired to post right now, like mentally tired. You know, I need to interact. I'm not ready to go and answer DMs and inquiries. When you can separate out the two, I think that's one of the best like daily habits, because it's a choice you have to make every single day because isn't it like a 30-day period is when a habit is formed? So for those first couple of weeks, it's going to feel very, very difficult to get to that place. But being able to create this mindset of all these things that you do use in your business, if there's any crossover with personal life, how can you unplug from that? Did that answer the question?
Yes, I'm really glad that you touched on that, because as a business owner, it's so easy to fall into the social media trap, right? So we have to post, you know, we have to use this platform that is available with, you know, millions of people, you know, accessible for us. But just to touch on what you were saying about you're either not content batching or, you know, creating the content, so you have to do that on the spot. Or you're, content batching, but you're on social media all day and you're taking in, all of these things that might make you second guess yourself, or, ultimately just not even end up posting. I know for, I really, as an entrepreneur, I really had to make that separation. And I did that sometime last year, where I, stopped the scrolling on social media and really just stuck to what you said, as far as using it as a business tool, and thinking of even more ways to remove myself from that burnout. Because what happened for me, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but I am a perfectionist. I'm an overachiever. I know this. I'm recovering, but what would happen is I would be on social media, on Facebook or Instagram, and I'm seeing all of these things that are happening that are great in people's lives. Their businesses are moving. They seem successful. And I'm like, man, I got to do some more work. I have to, now instead of me working, 8-9 hours a day, I'm like, no, let me just work on this for 2 more hours, because, I don't feel like I'm in a place where I need to be in comparison to everything else on social media. And I would think of myself as someone very self-aware, but even someone who's very self-aware can fall into the trap of, feeling like you don't measure up, or just not being able to mentally unplug from that. So I'm glad you touched on that. Did you have any other thoughts on that, as far as just, can you relate to the overachiever thing, or is that just
me? Yes, 100%. I can 100% relate to seeing other ideas and feeling like we have to implement them right away. I mean, I used to listen to business podcasts in the morning before I even started work. And then I would have, okay, I'm going to add 4 more things to my to-do list, because this business podcast is bringing me these ideas. And so creating boundaries, even with the content that you take in, it might be different when you work for yourself full time. I'm able to not listen to the business podcast in the morning, because I'm able to listen to that at a different point. When I was working 2 other jobs and doing photography on the side, the only time I had available was in the morning to take this information in. So just kind of seeing what scale you can unplug in that makes the most sense for you in your business. If you are working somewhere else and your creative job is currently on the side, then maybe it looks like deleting some of the social media apps from your phone, like Twitter or Pinterest, things that you can access on your computer that, okay, why are you even on Pinterest on your phone? We all like to use it on a computer anyway, but we're opening it 3 times a day just to randomly scroll through. And so those are areas that maybe you can pull back, so then you're not overstimulated when you do listen to the business podcast.
Right.
Because 100%, because it's exciting. We're passionate about this. We love what we do and we want to do more with it. But how do we take these ideas and put it into our life in a way that makes sense, where we're not overstimulating ourselves?
Yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned the business podcast, because, and for our listeners out there, if you're overachievers like us, you've probably started your mornings with business podcasts. You probably have a ton of books that you've ordered because you're like, I have to read this because I have to get to the next level. And essentially what we're both saying is pace yourself and create boundaries, like you said, Jessica, as far as what you take in as a business owner or creative, but also don't fall into the comparison trap of, you have to be in the same race or in a race with someone else, as far as taking your business to the next level or implementing ideas that are going to make your business better. The best business models, they grow gradually over time. They become better and better, and they build a solid foundation, so that, you're not just becoming the most trendy thing and then nobody is thinking about you, a year from now. So that's a great point. Let's get into just a little bit further into this, as far as like your day-to-day as an entrepreneur. And you said you're full-time, right? So at
Yeah.
some point you were doing like the side hustle and working part-time jobs. For me, I came from corporate finance. So I had a full-time job and I did a lot of my creative passions on the side. And now I'm full-time. So let's talk about some of the habits that you created for yourself that helps you stay organized as an entrepreneur and productive in a way that has allowed you to scale and not focus on, oh, I have to have a something to supplement my income, you know?
I love this question because I'm all about having daily routine and daily habit. And so for the listeners, what I share might not be able to be applied to your life where you're at right now. So just take it, the bits and pieces, and apply where you see fit. Because for me, I am full-time and I am able to create my own schedule. And I'm very thankful for it every day because I used to get home at 10 p.m. and then work on photography. And so I really want to make sure that everyone is like, oh, this is so unrelatable. I want them to know that, no, just take and see what you can apply. So for me, like I said, I am not on social media other than to really post. And when I'm there, I'm interacting, I'm answering DMs, I'm trying to be very intentional. So what that looks like is I delete Instagram from my phone. And so I only download the app when I'm ready to be on it. And so this means that I'm not checking it in the morning, where I used to be so bad about checking it in the morning. In the evening, I would be, why am I needing to answer an email at 11 p.m. at
checking
night?
notifications. I like to post and then just look at the engagement for some reason, like, oh, how's it doing? Do they like it?
It's like it's a hit of dopamine. You know what I mean? It gives us that satisfaction that people are liking it and interacting. And that's totally fine when you're on Instagram to post, but we have that, if we have that habit throughout the entire day, that's when we get distracted. And so another thing that I do, and this is probably the most unrelatable of all, but it's something maybe to think about, is I turn off my text notifications on my phone. Now, I don't have kids, I don't have a spouse, so I'm not, I don't need to. I know in other cases that's not going to work for some people, but maybe it means you do not disturb. Or I know with do not disturb, you can have certain contacts suppress the do not disturb. But for me, I will have all these group chats going and it's distracting. And same thing on my computer. I'll just turn it on to do not disturb, and other areas of social media as well. So being able to start my morning with a proper routine. So getting ready, even if I'm not going to do my makeup that day, I still take the time to brush up my eyebrows and put my hair back, even though that sounds so simple. Okay, so by having social media not on my phone means that my phone isn't a distraction and it's not something that I check in the morning. So it allows me to have this proper morning routine where I get ready. Even if I don't do my full makeup, I still brush up my eyebrows. I'll put my hair back. I'll put pants on, a bra on.
Isn't that important though?
It is, because it really makes me feel like, okay, even though I have the option to wear sweats every single day, it really helps my productivity and just feeling good about myself. And so then, I'm able to get on the computer at maybe 8 o'clock and check any urgent emails, and then go make myself breakfast. Every morning looks a bit different in terms of when I start work, but for my evening routine, this is really the key. Is I'll finish work at, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 3 p.m. if I was able to be really productive that day. But I love to go to a workout class in the evening to separate out my day. So I love Orange Theory, and I even have the satisfaction of the workout when I'm just driving there, because even though I haven't even gone into the studio yet, I know my work day is done because I'm making the effort to go and drive there, right? I used to go on walks, and especially during the pandemic, I'd go on walks and that would help me separate out. But having some kind of activity, even if that means you're going to take a 5-minute hot shower to deregulate your body or whatever the scientific word is. Having some kind of action with your body physically, I think helps you be able to shut down so that then you can have a nice evening routine, whether that's skincare and a Netflix, or if that means you're going out to dinner, where the lines aren't so blurred with personal and professional. There's the really common advice of make sure that you don't work from your bed. And I was guilty of that. When I was in New York, I had my bed, and then I had a little couch, and then I had a desk, and I never used the desk. At one point I actually got rid of the desk, but I would work from my couch instead of my bed, so that then I would have that separation. And that's it's advice we hear all the time, but it really is some of the best advice. Now I have a home office, and I know everybody's not able to have a home office. I'm so blessed to be able to shut the door at the end of the day, clear off my desk, and be done with it. But when I was living in New York, or even when I was at my parents' house, I had my desk space, and that's where my work lived, and my bed was for sleeping, So I think creating some kind of routine, start out by picking, do you want that to be morning or evening? Because when we put on all these other things on our to-do list, like, oh my gosh, okay, I have to get this freaking face mask on in time so that I can make it to Orange State. Then it becomes, okay, like this is not relaxing anymore, And as especially if you're an overachiever like we are, then you want to create the perfect morning routine and follow it every day. And then you get discouraged when you don't follow it. Just have one or two things that you're going to commit to. One in the morning, maybe that's not check your phone. One in the evening, get your body moving or go take a hot shower.
Yeah. You said so many nuggets, right? And these are things that you learn as you matriculate through entrepreneurship or the journey. So I'm very guilty of working from the bed. I've gotten better. So I work with my husband. So we own our businesses together. So this is like a full-time thing. But so he has a thing about not working from the bed. So he usually leaves the room. And when I'm feeling like I just want to not be seen and just dive into whatever I'm doing, I do that. But when it comes to a morning routine, these are a few things that I implement into my day that makes me feel more productive. The first thing is, like you said, I used to have a habit of checking my phone and checking social media to see what's happening in the morning after I post it. So I try not to do that first thing. Instead, I do some type of meditation, or I read, a verse from my Bible app. Or I just lay there sometimes and just think, just have that moment for myself. Because once the day starts, it's you're gone full force. And by the end of the day, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember what happened today. It's been so crazy. So especially if you I don't have kids, like you said. So I don't have these extra responsibilities as far as people pulling away at my time. But it's always good to put a moment, for yourself. And then the other thing that you mentioned was just creating boundaries around when you work, how long you work, and also I use productivity apps. So I manage a team. And so I've had to find really clear ways to create boundaries, because a lot of times you can communicate via text, but then you don't put your phone down and you're texting and thinking about work at 10 p.m. So really just creating those boundaries, like you said, about your work day in general, and then separating, the personal from the work, and giving yourself a treat. So your treat is going to work out. My treat is hanging out with my hubby and watching a cool Netflix show, because we don't typically get to binge watch things unless there's a lag, the pandemic. We got a chance to catch up on some stuff, but now usually by the time it's time to Netflix and chill, we're we're knocked out before the episode even starts. So that's my treat to myself. But that's such great advice, Jessica. You're you have this thing going. And the other thing is what you said, don't be too hard on yourself. This entrepreneur world, as a full-time or part-time, or even just trying to make the transition, there are books out there. but there's no rule book for you and your journey.
Mhm.
So I had to learn how to not be so hard on myself about making mistakes, or, like you said, man, I stuck with my routine for 7 days, and then on the 8th day, crap, I'm back to my old ways. So just give yourself some grace and set boundaries for yourself and everybody around you, and you'll be good.
There's an app. So when you're mentioning like the texting, one thing, if you want to take it extreme, you could do a Google Voice number and not even have the app on your phone, only be answering Google Voice from your computer. Might not be always the most practical because maybe you're already texting with people, but for new projects, new clients, or for only certain ones, like let's say you're just coordinating for a photo shoot and you could just have that be on Google Voice.
Mm-hmm.
That's one area to be able to. So when when you're texting with your friends, you guys are talking about something funny, and then a client thing pops up and you're like, oh, let me go, reply to the client. And then it's like, oh, wait, okay, I need to go onto my computer to put this in the calendar because I don't want the notification to, it disappears. And then all of a sudden the next week comes and they're like, hey, like, are we meeting today? You're like, so that's one way that you can also kind of set boundaries with texting while still being in that line of communication.
Yeah, for sure. And if you don't have a Google Voice number for your business, this is our advice right now for you to go ahead and get that. And invest in the Google Suite in general. And that will definitely help you create some boundaries. You can put your schedule there, your official schedule. You can put it on do not disturb. I do that a lot. So yeah, great advice, Jessica. All right, so we're gonna close this out with 2 more questions. So the first is, just tell me a little bit about, and this is switching gears and we'll go back to the entrepreneurship stuff, but you've done such a great job at branding, right? So if you're watching this video and not listening to this like on, podcast world, then you'll see that Jessica has like her yellow background and I have my Cool Girls Create background. So we are very serious about branding. But talk to me about some of the tips or tricks that you use to really separate yourself out from other photographers on social media and brand yourself in general.
Branding is one of my favorite topics because it's really what can separate you from instantly before someone even reads about you from other people. And I think it's really important. The first key is to make sure that your branding is true to yourself rather than following a trend. So for me, I picked out my color palette in 2016. And even though it's very trendy at the time to do more of the minimalistic, or maybe going in the direction of more blues and soft kind of ocean tones, or minimalistic beige and terracotta, both very beautiful palettes. For me, I love bright yellow, hot pink, light pink, salmon, coral. And I was like, wait, why do I have to limit myself to just a certain color, like earthy tones and this and that? If I love bright yellow, I can totally incorporate that into my branding while still having my photography maybe be like a little bit of a different palette. Like I was a bit nervous to have such bright colors because I was like, does my photography then have to fall in line with those colors? No, because what you create, when you're going to create it from your truest form, your photography and like the visuals that you are producing will align with whatever branding, because it's not just about the colors, it's about the entire your brand voice. And so naturally everything's going to come together and be cohesive. And so I think giving yourself the time to build out a color palette that truly reflects you or your company, your vision that you want, and picking like 2 of the more bold colors in your palette to be like your hero colors. So for me, my boldest color, the most obnoxious one, is yellow. So the yellow is what I'm going to choose to have in the background of my headshot, of my podcast stuff, For YouTube, I do a hot pink. It's a bit easier on the eyes for YouTube just with the camera. The yellow is a little bit too bright, but I choose these really bold colors so that then my audience gets used to these colors. And when they see my profile photo is yellow, everything is just very cohesive. And so for you, pick the most obnoxious color on your branding palette. Even if your palette, you're like, wait, I love the earthy tones. It's fine. Most people do. It's totally fine to love the earthy tones. But what most people aren't doing is they're not picking the navy blue or the bright, burnt sienna color for their headshot photo. They're picking the gray, or they're picking that beige or that more sage green. If you can take the more bold color, have that be your hero color, that's going to just visually separate you out, because at the top of like the Instagram feed, when we see everybody's headshots, we have gray, white, light blue, all fine. But if yours is bright red or like dark red or navy blue, you're going to pop. So if you want to go more minimalistic, go for it, but just be intentional with what colors you're choosing for your hero. Or if you're like, I want to go in a more colorful direction, go for it. Just make sure that it's cohesive. And there's so many amazing color palette builders. Just search on Google and give yourself the time to build out that palette, because you want something that's going to last for years. Like I said, mine has been since 2016. And I've been able to carry it through to 2022 without changing a thing. I've added colors. I've added like a green and a red because I ended up hiring a web designer to like make me logos. I didn't have a logo until like 2019. And she's like, okay, you need to have more than just 3 colors. And I think that also shows that a lot of us get distracted by the branding instead of building up the back end of our business first. And so just pick your colors, pick your font for cohesion, worry about your logos and all the fancy stuff a bit later on. It took me 3 years to get a logo. Okay, maybe that's a little bit like, okay, you need to have a logo, but you can see to really prioritize, like take it slow with branding and prioritize building up the back end of your business and the systems first.
That's great advice. That's great advice. You said so many things. So I'm just thinking about like when you talk about color patterns, that was something that, so for Cool Girls Create, my brand is all about being like vibrant,
Yeah.
And when I first started it, that was the thing, like earth tones and minimalistic and a lot of like soft. And I'm like, no, I love like this bright teal color and this purple. Purple represents creativity and the blue is like cool. So I stuck with it. And now you'll see that things just trend and go in and out of style. But the most important thing, what you said was like, instead of focusing on what, the colors and the logo and this, you should really be focusing on building out your systems and processes in the back end and letting your work speak for itself. And when you have the work that's produced, that's great work, and you have your own style, what starts to happen is as you build that momentum, the branding and everything will tie in.
Yes.
And that's really what's been happening with me as well. My brand is about creativity. So whenever you see anything related to T Westbrook or Cool Girls Create, you associate the colors, but it's more so about what is the message that you're putting out and what is the result of the work that you're doing. Is it good? Is it quality? Is it a particular style? Like I said, so that's great advice. When it comes to, your social media presence in general, how do you decide what to teach?
So for like Instagram versus YouTube, or
yes, like Instagram. So YouTube, you can create a lot of long form content.
Yeah.
So the tutorials, behind the scenes, that type of thing. But what are some quick tricks for entrepreneurs who, and this applies for any entrepreneur business, because when you are building your audience, you want to educate them, whether that's on a product or service. You want to entertain them and you want them to feel a part of your community. So just give us, your top thing that you focus on that helps you build your community or tell your story as an entrepreneur.
So on Instagram, I have just been able to take the top questions from my Facebook group and YouTube and the top 5 questions and create content just on those 5 things. Now, if you're like, I don't have a Facebook group, I would take the top 5 questions that you would have had for yourself when you were first starting out, or whatever realm you're teaching. For me, I teach beginner photographers. So I'm taking the questions that I would have when I was first beginning.
Mhm.
And I think that taking 5, even 3, let's make it even simpler, 3, and continuing to create similar content around that, because once you post to Instagram, not everybody in your audience is going to see that post. So it's okay to recycle the content and then to give it a different spin. But whether that's on pricing, or if that's for me, I have graphics on like when to upgrade your gear, and then also on like color theory. So I'm kind of touching on different points of business. So I have the back end of pricing your photography, and then I have color theory, the actual visuals, and then the other area of when is it time for me to take it to the next level? When is it time for me to upgrade gear? And I'm all about use financial wisdom and patience. You don't need the latest and the greatest. And that kind of teaching separates me from other photographers who are, maybe they're not even talking about that, but maybe they are. They're like, you do need to upgrade. I don't think there's that many photographers these days who are pushing people to upgrade at all, but maybe we're not even talking about it. So for me to say, hey, I still use a Mark IV and I'm fine. I might upgrade and I'll walk you through my process, but you can start out exactly where you're at, focus on the back end of your business.
Yeah. And that is, look, I was going to say, I've had my same little baby for about 5 years now. And it's so funny because I bought other cameras and other lenses, but I still revert back to one of the older models. So, you focusing on the art, the work in the systems versus, having the best or the newest, trendiest equipment. That's just hustling backwards.
Yeah.
So, and then there is one thing that you mentioned that I wanted to just reiterate.
Yeah.
It's okay to recycle content. In fact, it's encouraged. A lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, or people who are just trying to grow their brand presence, they think that they just have to crank out like all of this different content to be successful. But the trick is really, like you said, taking a few questions, like top questions, frequently asked questions from your audience, or things that you would have liked to know about the product or service, and then building on top of that and compounding, or maybe taking that one topic and then breaking it down into subtopics. But don't feel like you have to just create all of this original content from scratch, and then don't be able to repurpose or reuse.
Yeah.
So if that's one thing that I want you to take out of this entire conversation as a business owner, because marketing and content, that really keeps a lot of us up at night.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that's one thing that you could take from our combo, it's that it's okay to repurpose content. It's okay to, take one topic and then create subtopics around it versus like going everywhere.
Yeah, 100%. And even you can take recycling content so far as you write 3 captions and you're going to just recycle through those 3 captions, because again, the chance that everybody's seeing all 3 captions, the same person, is very low. They're only going to see one. And so if in 3 weeks you want to post your second caption and just change out, like if you're making a Canva graphic, maybe make 3 different options for like the first card that they see, the first graphic, and recycle that, change out the title even, and have it be about your second topic. But don't overthink making brand new graphics every single time. Like if you're making infographics, have 3 templates and then swap out your title, make them about the different topics, and then have 3 different captions for each topic, and you have endless options.
Yeah, that's great advice. That is great advice. All right, so we're gonna close this out because this was a good episode. We were really getting into it.
If I do say so ourselves.
Look, yes, a little pat on the back. So just to close us out, give us one piece of advice that and when I say blah, 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 blah. Okay, let me try this again. So just to close us out, Jessica, give us your one last piece of advice that you think would help business owners, creative entrepreneurs catapult their business or just take things to the next level.
So my number one piece of advice would be to really take what we shared about separating out the personal and the professional, because that is going to play into your mindset. And once you can get into the right mindset, then we can not operate out of emotion when it comes to our business. So many creatives, I had this happen all the time. I would catch myself. It's so easy for us to operate out of emotion in our business and to start to compare ourselves to others when we're scrolling on social media, or when it comes to if you see an email from a client at 11 p.m. and the client is a bit unhappy and your feelings are hurt over it. Well, then your feelings are going to be hurt the rest of the night, and maybe you'll even lose sleep over it. Yeah. Having the right mindset and having healthy boundaries for yourself is going to look different in different stages of your life. So take what we shared, take one thing and apply it, and just see how creating these types of boundaries are going to benefit your business in the long run. And okay, I love T how you've mentioned momentum, because I'm that same way. When it comes to building a business, you have to use patience, wisdom, and a plan. And it's something for the long run. But social media and just industries in general right now are trying to teach us that it has to happen now. Focus on your branding, focus on your colors, get your website set up, and then worry about your business. No, that's so backwards. Create the systems within your business, but focus first on your mindset so that you're not operating out of emotion. It's separate, personal and professional, as much as it can be. There's still going to be gray areas, especially if you're in the creative industry. But I love how you talk about building up that momentum and using patience, because that is the opposite of our current creative culture. Mm-hmm. Business culture and social media in general right now. It's not about patience. It's about instant gratification. It's about getting ahead. But that's not how business works.
Exactly.
So that would be my best advice to give.
Yeah, yes. And you know what? This conversation, I believe, is going to really touch our listeners, because just adding to what you were saying about building momentum and having the right mindset. A lot of times as entrepreneurs, we operate from emotion, but also we operate from a sense of necessity, meaning, I have to make this money quickly because I have to survive, or I'm losing money, I'm sitting on inventory, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Yeah. And that causes you to, what we call over here, get lost in the weeds. So meaning you are spending all of this time on frivolous activities or activities that aren't going to make you more money. They're causing you stress, and it's not really pushing your business forward because of the mindset that you're in. So if I could, add to what you're saying, Jessica, it would be when it comes to your mindset, don't operate out of emotion, have a plan, but also start to think of yourself as a business owner, meaning it is not your job to do every single task in the business and do the branding and do the marketing and take the photos and talk to the clients and all of this. Your goal should be, how can I build a solid foundation for my business and get help to add to that? Yeah. And get myself out of a position where I'm burning myself into a hole every day to be super entrepreneur based on what's happening on social media, versus actually spending the time to get the knowledge and implement the right plan.
That's so good. 1,000%. Yes.
Yeah. So this was so great. So let's close out and just tell everybody where they can find you on the internet, honey. Where can they find you?
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a good conversation and so refreshing. And I really hope that it's just able to help whoever is listening out there. So So you can find me on Instagram at Jessica Whitaker, or if you're a photographer and you would like to join my Facebook group, you can just search up Build and Bloom on Facebook groups or podcast as well. I haven't made an episode since 2020, but I'm coming out with a proper season 2. So if you'd like, and who knows, maybe you'll see T on the podcast soon, you can find that on any app, just search Build and Bloom.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. I am a part of your community on Facebook, and I must say that it is great. So if you are looking for a community just as a creative or photographer, then definitely join her Facebook group. And I am wishing you the best. I know that this touched somebody, but see y'all on the next episode of Boss Up Talk. And T Westbrook is signing out. Peace.